Well, I thought maybe we'll be able to take questions, but maybe just to start, just want to ask you, Amber, about your initial encounter with the novel and what the spark was that led you to feel that you had to adapt it into a movie.
How many people here have read Painted Black, the novel? Okay, so there's a couple people here. You understand how enthralling and engaging the actual novel is. One of the things that I read it about 10 years ago, and actually this lady named Amy Poehler gave it to me and said, you have to read this book, it's extraordinary. And so she gave me her copy and I read it, and I had such a visceral reaction to the emotionality of the book and how complex the women were in it. And I really saw it in a very cinematic way. I saw it as something that I could not remember seeing on screen since Persona, Ingmar Bergman's film Persona. Like a film like that, about two women that it really wasn't about the guy. It was about, their own obsession with each other. And so the book itself had a lot of that going on for it. It had real depth and a strong sense of, I've described it as an interior violence of how strong women can feel. And so I thought what an interesting journey that would be to try and make that a movie, which is not easy. So.
Well, they're really bold stylistic choices throughout the movie, and I'm just thinking, well, now the dissolve of the faces, that was so extraordinary.
People love the dissolve of the face.
But now that you mentioned Persona, I can see a little bit of the influence there. But obviously the color palette, the production design. Can you say, did you see the book as being a springboard for that? Clearly, you could interpret. You didn't have to be deferential to it.
Well, the book actually takes place in the 80s. One of the great things about it is it really encompasses Los Angeles, where I was born and raised. I'm a third generation from there, so I also have an understanding and a love for the city, much like Janet Fitch, who also lives there. And so it was really looked at like 80s punk and that. And there was, in the book, there's much more about Josie's personal life and her friendships and her world, taking drugs and partying and being like this badass, tough chick. And so I knew that I wanted, I knew that I wanted tones and colors and feelings like The Hunger, or things like Sunset Boulevard, or certainly David Lynch. And so those were things I even really like. Films that influenced me, I know this is like way out of the realm of this, but not really, is things like Robert Wise's The Haunting, which my father was in. That movie influenced me so heavily as a kid, and how the house in that movie had its own personality and was sort of this creature. And I wanted Meredith and her house to feel like a creature, to feel like this thing on its own. So that film, but also things like, the music, the score in this is pre-Stranger Things, so thank you very much. The Dark Crystal, Legend, Labyrinth, those movies. The scene when Josie first comes over to Meredith's house and there's just, glass on the floor and it's glittering and there's a huge fire in the fireplace and you see like a dark taxidermy, like a wolf in the background. Like it's so ridiculous. And you're like, nobody lives here. That's not possible. But that is old Los Angeles money. It's not unrealistic. And that was completely inspired, and I showed Brian Rigney Hubbard, who did such an incredible job, our cinematographer. I showed him this scene in Legend, where is it Chris Roth that's in that film? No.
Tim Roth.
Tim Roth, thank you. He's got the big giant horns, and he steps out of this glass mirror, and the protagonist woman in that is like dancing with death in this very melodramatic sequence where the fire is also like shining on a black lacquered floor. And I showed him that whole sequence and I said, I want that to be this. I want Meredith to be like lost in a sea of black. I don't want you to give it like cinematic color, like light the walls. I said fucking black with like black and some more black and then some fire. So Brian and I had a very strong sense of making sure that the look of the film also represented the emotions of the characters.
Well, Janet, I want to ask you about your encounter with Tamblyn and her work, and when you became involved, or how you were involved.
Well, I became involved because I'd had an experience where the movie had been optioned and read the script and was like, oh my God, I hope this never gets made. So that when this young actress was, expressed interest, it was like, I don't know. And a mutual friend, a poet, Derek Brown, knew that this had been going on long enough. And he said, oh, come and have a drink at our local tiki bar. And I have to go to a tiki bar, right? So we go out for a couple scorpions, and I see the passion that Amber had for this movie and for the book, and you don't say no to Amber Tamblyn. I mean, she's a force of nature, and that's what it takes to make a film like this. Nobody gave her notes. Nobody said what she should do, what she shouldn't do. It was such a singular vision that she, I guess, didn't even expect to direct it to begin with. But she had such a singular vision, there was only one person who could have done it, and she did it. So.
What did like it to go to the tiki bar?
Well,
We met at the Pan Quotidian.
We did.
We met at a Pan Quotidian, and I was like, oh hey, and it was the same thing, force of nature. You whipped out your computer and you had like 50 images, like LA, but it references what Josie was gonna look like, all the stuff, and I couldn't say no. No one can say no.
So you and Tangerine, your company, were involved at what stage?
So Amber worked with another producer, Ren Arthur, and we met Ren at a film festival, and we were just talking to her and said, you have to read the script. We read the script, we said, we like the script, and she's like, you have to meet Amber, Ren is super persistent, and then there was the infamous Pan Quotidian with no scorpions meeting.
Okay, take questions from the audience. And if I could ask you to stand, because we don't have mics today. At the very back there. Yes, you. Yes?
Who are two of your favorite female directors for Amber? I want to preface that with, you're probably not giving yourself enough credit by using Tarantino, who I don't think can be as psychedelic or whatever it is, and Lynch, who probably couldn't be as real as this.
Sir, would you like to date me? Well, just mention Catherine Diekman, who's here, who's an extraordinary filmmaker. I also think of people like, this could be a conversation for hours, but I sat on a panel recently at a festival with Catherine Hardwicke, who I think is just incredible and is able to do such commercial films like Twilight, and then to go all the way on the other side and do something as punk rock as Dogtown is pretty cool. I like women who have big, broad personalities and also broad things to say. That's pun intended. So.
Did I see one head in front of you? No, over here? Yes? Yes, you. Blonde woman? Yes.
Hi. Actually, what I wanted to ask was a change in scene that you did from the book to the film adaptation. First, I'd like to say stunning.
Thank you.
You take a moment, and instead of doing it from the standpoint of looking at a moment in film, you actually took us into the moment, and you kept us suspended there, which is a very tricky thing to have done, because you never could escape from this kind of Vaseline-covered snowball that we entered. That being said, in the scene where she finds the closet, you changed it from the intimacy of her kind of personal boudoir to a room that had a lot of childlike elements in it, and I thought that was a very specific change that I wanted to ask you about.
So that's about having a budget He had only so much money. He could not build a magic door in a boudoir. I mean, it really was very, you know, we shot this movie in 21 days, you guys.
Oh, wow.
Holy crap.
Yes. Wow. On a small budget. We did, you know, really, everyone here worked their ass off. Amy worked her ass off. And so did the crew. I mean, people worked like you wouldn't believe. And so one of the things, Marcus Kirshner, who did the, you know, production design of this, equally worked so hard, and he was the one that figured that out. We could not, there wasn't enough manpower to create, so in the book, she's talking about, in the book, there's actually the entrance. Josie discovers that there's a connection, there's a weird, like, closet, mini closet that is connected between Meredith's bedroom and Michael's bedroom, which makes it just a tiny bit creepier. And that there's things in there, like a shared, like she always had access to his room in a private way, which made it weird. And that's in the book. And then she also finds this picture in there, same thing. But we actually, so we couldn't create a room like that the way it was written in the book. We thought about doing, you know, and in the book as well, it's like she opens the closet door, and then at the back of the closet door is another door. And that's how she finds it, like a door behind a door. That was almost impossible to do. It was Marcus that came up with it. He's like, we're like way overthinking this. What matters is that she just finds a room that's blocked off somehow. What matters is what's in the room, what she finds. He's like, let's just throw a big ass, you know, thing in front of it. Anything. Anything that's tall and can block a door. You know, and there was a lot of Nancy Kwan, who's amazing. She had a whole other storyline as the sort of this woman who'd worked for Meredith forever and had seen the pain of this family, and then, you know, therefore also the pain of losing Michael, because she raised Michael herself. Meredith clearly didn't raise this kid. A lot of her stuff had to go. When this film was finished, its running time, you know, was over 3 hours. It was 3 hours and like 20 minutes. So you have to remember, we cut half of the footage we shot. There was so much story to this film. And so there was an element where when Josie finds the picture, Nancy Kwan's character like comes in the side door that's Meredith's bedroom. So you see that they're connected. You actually see that they are connected. And they have a moment where they look at each other. But that had to, we realized like it didn't need to be there. Kill your darlings, as they say.